So today we started off with doing the Algebra EOC review. And I know the paper says Algebra FSA review, but we're going to pretend it says EOC because we are prepping for the Algebra EOC that you guys are going to be taking in May. That's in, right now it's March 29th, so it's pretty much almost April. So like in a month, almost a month and a half. But this is the review number 10. So yeah, we're kind of jumping around with like the number that we're doing it. You would think that last week we did number 1, this week we would do number 2. That's okay. It doesn't matter. We're going to eventually do all of them. We're just kind of jumping around. So hopefully you guys had enough time to go through and do this numbers 1 through 7. If not, then you might need to finish it on your own. But I'm going to show the answers up here so you guys can check them, make sure you did it correct. And I'm going to be talking as you guys are checking your answers. So make sure you check your answers. And if you made a mistake, please fix it. But there's been a couple of you guys that have been trying to submit these like with the assignments, or you're asking me, what do I do with my work for the Algebra EOC review? Okay, so what you're doing is you're going to hold on to all of your work, all of these Algebra EOC review things that we're doing. You're going to hold it all together in one big pile, or you can take a bunch of pictures of all of your work, keep it in one like photo album. And then at the end of the quarter, that's when you're going to submit it as one big file. Okay, you're going to submit a bunch of pictures as one big thing at the end of the quarter. So I don't need you guys to be submitting these now. Don't submit them with your assignments, please. Just wait until the end of the quarter because you're going to have to submit it again later. That doesn't mean wait until the end of the quarter to do all of these because it's going to be a lot of work. Like literally today, we just did 7 questions. Last week, I think there was a total of like 20 questions or something. Okay, so if you wait until last minute to actually do all of the work for them, you're going to be overwhelmed. It's a bunch of work and you might forget how to go through and do some of these. Okay, so make sure you guys do them each day that we're doing it together, showing your work, and then just keeping it all together in one big pile. And then at the end of the quarter, in May, I will give you guys a place to submit it on Schoology. Okay, any questions on that or any questions on the review for today? Would you like me to go over any of these? Or if you need a couple more seconds to check your answers, let me know. Type in the chat. If you are good, you can type that you're good in the chat. Or if you want me to go over any, I can. Okay, I'll wait a couple more seconds. So if you actually look at number 7, I'm just going to kind of talk through it as you guys are checking them still. If you look at number 7, this were my graph over here. I actually drew out my own graph. So some of you guys, I know you don't have printers, or sometimes your printer runs out of ink. That is how you draw a graph. You can draw your y-axis, draw your x-axis, and draw the little tiny lines on the axes. Those are little tick marks, and then that's how you can draw your graph. If you don't actually have a graph on your paper printed out, just draw it yourself, okay? So let me just go through these really quickly. Where is it here? For number 1, it says draw a circle around all the words that mean X values and underline all the words that mean Y values. So X values, that's all of your domain. Y values, that's all of your range. So that's all of your input, output, all of that stuff there. You can organize it there. We've got our answers there to check them. And then to check if it's a function, our answer says each X has only one Y value associated with it. Another way to check as well, when you're doing like numbers 5 and 6, it says, is the graph a function, yes or no? You can do the vertical line test. So that is where you would put your pencil, you would rest it anywhere on top of that line. So let's pretend like my pencil is that red line, and then you can scoot it anywhere from left to right. So if I scoot my pencil to the left, like over here, or if I scoot it to the right, like over here, no matter where I put my pencil on top of that line, if it only passes through one time and one time only, then the answer is yes, it is a function. Okay, whereas like number 6, let's say I put my pencil here. Okay, so here's my pencil. If my pencil is that red line, I put my pencil on top of that graph, a vertical line test. And if my pencil passes through the graph more than once, then the answer is no, it is not a function. So I could put my pencil there. If I were to scoot it over a little to the left, like let's say here, technically it's not passing at all. It doesn't really matter. But if I scoot it over here to the right, it's passing through more than once. So again, the answer is no. Okay, and then that last section, number 7, table mapping, graph. This is from before when I was teaching you guys, before I taught you guys. But it's pretty simple. You just need a little refresher on that. I've got all your answers, your visuals there. Hopefully that helps you guys understand it there. Can anyone else hear me? I see someone typed in the chat that someone can't hear me. Can anyone else hear me? Hopefully you guys can. Yeah. Okay. If you can't hear me, try logging out and rejoining. Log out and rejoin if you cannot hear me. Because if most people can hear me, it might be something on your end. But if it's everyone that can't hear me, then it's usually my end. But I think most people can hear me. So I'm going to continue going on this. Does anyone have any questions on the review for today or just in general? I think everyone should be good now. I gave enough time to kind of check your answers and everything like that. But if you have questions, I know some people don't feel comfortable typing in the chat, just send me a message, even if it's for the review, normal assignments, daily, anything like that. Just send me a message and I can work with you one-on-one. Okay, so I'm going to get started on our actual assignment for today, which is on my screen here. It says the review for factoring quiz assignment, because tomorrow, it's not open yet, but tomorrow you're going to be taking a quiz. It's on Schoology. It's not open yet. I will open it later today and I will let you guys know when it's actually open. So once you finish this assignment today, if you wanted to take the quiz today, you can, or you can just wait until tomorrow because there's no Teams meeting tomorrow. You're just doing the quiz tomorrow. But today you're just reviewing for that quiz tomorrow. There's a total of 14 questions. You're going to be doing all of them. And I'm actually not going to be doing any of them on the assignment. What I'm going to do to help you guys is we're going to be filling out this graphic organizer here, which was another attachment in today's lesson. And I'm going to tell you when you're working through the questions on the assignment where you can look on this graphic organizer to help you answer questions. So let's pretend like we're going through this assignment here. For numbers 1 and 2, it says factor by GCF. Okay. So actually all of these examples here on the visual, you're going to be factoring by GCF for most of these. So you can kind of say this is like for numbers 1 to 2. We'll actually go through and do a couple of questions where we factor out the GCF. So you can see it on pretty much any of these examples here. Starting for the rest of the paper, number 3 and 4, it says factor by grouping. Okay, so factor by grouping. That's going to be over here on the right. Numbers 3 and 4, you're going to factor by grouping. Okay, so let's do an example like this. And we've done all of this stuff in the past already. So if you think I'm going fast, send me a message and we can work together one-on-one. But yes, I'm going to be going kind of fast through this because we've been working on this for a couple of weeks now. You should know how to do it. So I'm going to zoom in here. We're doing our factor by grouping. This example here all the way to the right. Okay, so when you're doing this, you want to draw out your 2 sets of parentheses. So here's my first set, here's my second set, and the little tiny plus sign in between. We're going to factor out something from the first set here of parentheses. So here's my next line. I'm going to draw my first set. We're going to factor out a number first. Okay, so we have a 2 and an invisible -1. Okay, the GCF, greatest common factor, for this one, we could just say is 1 because we can do 2 divided by 1 is 2. And then -1 divided by 1 is -1. Okay. And then you can go on to your variables. I'm going to erase that 1 because it's invisible. Can I factor out the variable a from our first set of parentheses? You can type in the chat. Can I factor out the variable a from the first set of parentheses? Yes, I can. You can only do this if you have the variable at every single term, which we do. Okay, so I'm going to take out an a. You want to take out the smallest exponent. So it's an exponent of 2. Okay, so now we can do our division. A to the power of 3 divided by a to the power of 2. Just subtract your exponents. 3 minus 2 is 1. Okay, and then the next one. We have a to the power of 2 divided by a to the power of 2. Subtract your exponents. 2 minus 2 is 0. Okay, and then our last variable, we have a b. We can't take out the variable b because it's not at every term, so I'm just going to bring it down here. Okay, and then let's see if we can clean up, simplify. My first term here, the coefficient of 1, that's invisible, so I'm going to erase it. My next term here, the exponent of 1 is invisible, so I'm going to erase that 1. And then our last term here, whoops. Let's first look at our a to the power of 0. Anything to the power of 0 is really equal to what? Anything to the power of 0 is really equal to what? 1. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and change this a to the power of 0 to a times 1. Okay. And then anything times 1 is that anything, or you can just look at the actual multiplication. Negative 1 times 1 would just be negative 1. And then from there, go one step further. Can we erase that 1? Well, yeah, the coefficient of 1 is invisible. Okay, so if I erase it, I'm going to scoot this b over. We have negative b. We know in our head there's an invisible 1. I just erased it, so that's why it's gone. Okay, so once we simplify, that's what we have, the a squared parentheses 2a minus b. Okay, now let's go on to factoring our second set of parentheses, this one here. So here's my second set of parentheses. If this right here is 2a minus b, what does this one need to equal? Go ahead and tell me in the chat. If the first set of parentheses, we got a 2a minus b, what does the second set of parentheses need to also be? Same thing, 2a minus b. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and write it out. 2a minus b. Okay, so sometimes that can help you make it a little bit easier, faster to go through with your factoring. I'm going to erase this here. Okay, let's look at our numbers. We need to see 10 divided by what is 2? And then negative 5 divided by what would be a negative 1? Okay, let's see. What can I factor out here? 10 divided by what is 2? That might be the easier one to think about. Let's see. I see a 5, 5. Let's plug it in and check. I'm going to plug in my 5. And then we'll do our division. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Perfect. That one works out. And let's check the other one. Negative 5 divided by 5 is negative 1. Perfect. So that works out. Then let's check our variables. We have the a here. There's no a next to the 5, so you would just bring it down. So that one's good. And then our variable b, there's no other b, so you just drag it down. Okay, let's check and see if we can clean any of this stuff up over here. The coefficient of 1, again, that's invisible, so I just erased it. Okay, almost done. Let's draw our two sets of parentheses again, one last time. And remember, when you're doing this, if you can, you want to put it in standard form where the highest exponent goes first. So let's see here. What can I put in the first set or the second set of parentheses? Go ahead and tell me, what should I put in the first set of parentheses? Should the first set be the a squared, plus 5, or should it be 2a minus b? What should I put in the first set? The a squared plus 5 or 2a minus b? And we're putting it in standard form. So remember, highest exponent first, alphabetical order. So really focus on the highest exponent first. We're looking for, what do I put here? Highest exponent first, it's either going to be the a squared or the 2a. Well, the a squared, that one has the higher exponent. So we're going to put that one in our first set of parentheses, this a squared plus 5. Let's drag it down here, a squared plus 5. Okay, and then the second set, when we're putting it in standard form, that's going to be the 2a minus b, 2a minus b. Okay, because the a squared and then the 2a, that's what's telling us what's going to go where. If they both had the same highest exponent, if they were both a squared or they were both just a, the order wouldn't matter. But since the first one has the squared, you want to put that one first. Okay, So then that would be your answer here. You could go back, FOIL it out, first, outer, inner, last, and multiply, and then combine like terms to check your work. But that is pretty much how you're going to do numbers 3 and 4. Yep, numbers 3 and 4 from the assignment. I'm going to go back to it here. That is how you'll do numbers 3 and 4. You'll look at the right side of your worksheet there. Okay, going on to our next one, numbers 5 and 6. It says factor by difference of squares. Okay, let's go on to our graphic organizer, factoring by difference of squares. You can see all the way over here to the left, it says difference of squares. So this is what you're going to do when you're doing numbers 5 through 6. You're going to look over here all the way to the left. And we're going to factor with difference of squares. That's where if you have like the a squared minus b squared. Okay, so our first example, we have x squared minus 64. Let's draw out our two sets of parentheses. And then this is where you just look for like the square root. Okay, let's think. What times what? I'll zoom in a little bit more. What times what is x squared? Or what is the square root of x squared? What times what is x squared? And this is from the past. We did this, I think it was last week or maybe the week before. What times what would be x squared? Remember, it has to be the same thing, same thing. We're looking at just the x part. I see someone put in something else already. So yeah, x times x. Let's go ahead and put that in. X times x. And you can check it. X times x is x squared. Perfect. Okay, now we'll go on to that 64. Now, what times what is 64? Same thing. What times what is 64? Same thing. Or what is the square root of 64? What times what? You can think 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9. Keep going until you get what times what is 64. I see someone wrote in the 8 times 8. Let's check and see. 8 times 8. So let's see. 8 times 8 is 64. Perfect. Okay, so we've got an x, x8, x8. That's the same thing. The only difference between these two is one has a plus sign and then the other one has a minus sign. And then that is it. That would be your final answer there since we don't need to factor out a GCF. Again, FOIL it out, check your work. That's how you can check your answers for all of these. Okay, let's do another example. This one here, we're going to first need to look for a GCF, greatest common factor. So let's first factor something out. Looking at just our numbers, the coefficient, what can I factor out here? 18 divided by what? And negative 2 divided by what? What's the biggest number I can factor out here? 18 divided by what? And negative 2 divided by what? The biggest number, or the GCF, greatest common factor. For this one, it would be a 2. Okay, let's factor out a 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. And then negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Okay, now let's look at our variables. We have an m squared. There's no m's over here to the right, so I'm just going to drag down this m squared. Okay, and then looking at our next variable, we have n and n to the power of 3. That means, yes, I can take out the variable n. You want to take out the smallest exponent, so I'm going to take out n to the power of 1. Okay, now we can do our division. N to the power of 1 divided by n to the power of 1. Subtract your exponents. 1 minus 1 is 0. And then our next one, we have n to the power of 3 divided by n to the power of 1. Subtract your exponents. 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay, now let's clean it up if we can. This first one, we can erase that exponent of 1 because it's invisible. Okay, and if you can factor it out without putting the 1 there, that's fine too. I don't need you to write it down and then erase it. You can just go straight to the answer. That's fine. Our next one here, our n to the power of 0. Anything to the power of 0 is really equal to 1. So I'm going to change this to a times 1. And then anything times 1 is just that anything. So 9m squared times 1 is just 9m squared. So I erase that times 1. And then our last one here, the minus 1n squared, the coefficient of 1, it's invisible, so I erased it. Okay, I'm going to scoot this over, minus n squared. Minus n squared. Okay, and then from there, we're going to do kind of what we did up top here. Here's my 2, and here's my 2 sets of parentheses. Let's first think. What times what, same thing, would be 9m squared? Or you can break it down piece by piece. Look at just the coefficient first. What times what is 9? Just the numbers. Same thing. What times what is 9? Same thing. And go ahead and type it in the chat. What times what is 9? Same thing. Or what is the square root of 9? I see 3 times 3. Perfect. Let's try it out. 3 times 3. Let's see. 3 times 3 is 9. Perfect. Now let's check our variable. M squared. What times what is m squared? I see someone wrote 3m times 3m. Let's see. Here's my m. Here's my m. And let's check. 3m times 3m is 9m squared. Just add your exponents. That works too. Okay. Let's go on to our n squared. What times what, same thing, would be n squared? Don't even worry about the signs. What times what would be n squared? If m times m is m squared, that means n times n is n squared. We can check. N times n is n squared. Perfect. Okay, almost done. We need to add in our signs. Here's a plus sign. Here's a minus sign. And then you are all finished. That would be your final answer there. We first factored out that 2n, and then the rest is the same from the first example there. Okay, so that was to help you with numbers 5 through 6. On the assignment, let's look at our next little section here, numbers 7 through 10. It says factor the basic trinomials with x squared plus bx plus c. For numbers 7 through 10, you're going to look here with the 3 terms, numbers 7 through 10 with trinomials x squared plus bx plus c. So you need to find factors of c that add up to b. Okay, so we've got our first example, x squared minus x minus 42. Again, you can also actually use the x puzzle with this too, so I'm going to draw it out. We need to see what multiplies the factors of c, and for this one it's a negative 42, and then what adds to b, and b is negative 1. Okay, so let's think. What times what is negative 42, and then what plus what would be a negative 1. So this is where you just go straight to your answer here. There's not a bunch of steps. You could think 1 times 42 or 1 times negative 42 is negative 42, but it doesn't add to a negative 1. So I see someone said negative 7 times 6. Let's see, negative 7 times positive 6. If we multiply those numbers, yes, we get negative 42. And then if we add those numbers, these ones here, then yeah, we get a negative 1. So that's what we're going to use, a negative 7 and a positive 6. Okay. When we're writing out our answer over here, our final answer, the first spot you want to have a variable. They told us the variable that we're using here is x. So here's an x, here's an x. Then I'm going to take these two numbers, the negative 7 and the positive 6, just plug them in anywhere, it doesn't matter. So here's my negative 7, here's the positive 6, and then that is it. That's your final answer. You can FOIL it out, check your work, and then you're done. Okay, so that's the first one. Our second one, first, at the very, very top of this graphic organizer says, first look for a GCF. This one here, we got a GCF. Let's factor it out. Okay, so we think 2 divided by what? 20 divided by what? And 50 divided by what? The GCF of all of these here, the greatest common factor is 2. So let's do our division. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 20 divided by 2 is positive 10. And then 50 divided by 2 is positive 25. Okay, let's check and see if we can take out any variables. I've got a w squared, w, no w's there. So just drag those down. Here's my w squared, here's my w. And let's check and see if we can clean it up. Okay, this one here, I can erase the coefficient of 1, so that's gone. And the rest are all good. So now from here, let's start writing out our final answer. We need to see what multiplies to 20, oops, I wrote that wrong there. What multiplies to 25 and adds to 10. Okay, so let's see here. What would multiply? What times what would be 25? And then what plus what is 10? You can think 1 times 25 is 25, but 1 plus 25, it's not 10. So what else could I multiply to get a 25 that adds to 10? And for all of these here, you're going to do trial and error. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to try it out a million different times. For this one here, let's do 5. I see someone said 5 times 5. So let's see. 5 times 5 is 25. That works. And then add them together. 5 plus 5 is 10. Perfect. So that works. Let's write out our final answer. Remember, the first spot in your parentheses is for the variable. They're using the variable w. So here's a w, here's a w. And then we've got a positive 5 and a positive 5. You can just plug that in. Plus 5 plus 5. Okay? Technically, that's your answer there. But you can see this w plus 5 is getting multiplied by itself again. So another way to write this one step further is just to square that w plus 5. Okay? So you would square the w plus 5 is squared. So that would be your final answer. Technically, yes, these are the same thing, but this one is the simplified answer. Simplified. And you always want to write your answer in the simplified form as much as you can, because that w plus 5, and then when we see that squared, we know that also means the w plus 5, w plus 5. Okay. So that was for numbers 7 through 10. Let's look at our last little section here on the assignment. Numbers 11 through 14. It says factor the ax squared plus bx plus c trinomials for numbers 11 through 14. You're going to look at your last little section on the graphic organizer here, numbers 11 through 14. So this is for 3 terms. You're going to use the X puzzle. And if you're looking at your notes, if you just printed them out and you're kind of following along with me, you need to change this because on the notes that are attached in Schoology, it's not what I taught you guys. I don't want you to get confused with that other method. So let's just follow this X puzzle. So I changed this here. So be careful. Make sure you change that on your paper too, or write that down. We're going to use the X puzzle. So you need to see what multiplies to AC and adds to B. So again, I'm going to draw my X puzzle. Multiplies to AC. Whoops, actually, let's back up here. I'm going too fast. First, let's see. My very first thing says, first, look for a GCF. And this one here, yes, there's a GCF. So let's factor it out first before we do our X puzzle. Let's see. 30 divided by what? Negative 27 divided by what? And then 6 divided by what? Okay, we can divide all of these. The GCF for all of these would be 3. Perfect. I see someone write it in there. So let's go ahead and divide. 30 divided by 3 is 10. Negative 27 divided by 3 is negative 9. And then 6 divided by 3 is positive 2. Okay, now let's look at our variables. We've got an x squared, x, no variables there. So just drag them down, x squared, x, and then we're good to go. Clean it up if you can. And I don't think there's anything to clean up there. It looks pretty good. Now we can do our X puzzle now that we've first factored out the GCF. So we're going to see what multiplies. A, remember it's A, B, C. What multiplies? A times C. What is A times C? Go ahead and tell me. And be careful with your signs. Tell me if it's a positive or a negative. What is A times C? Positive 20, perfect, because it's 10 times positive 2, so that's a positive 20. So we need to see what multiplies to 20, a positive 20, and then what adds to B. What is B? Be careful with your sign. What is B? Make sure you're careful with your sign there. B is a negative 9, perfect. So these two numbers here and here, they need to multiply to a positive 20, but when you add them together, we get a negative 9. So let's think, what times what is positive 20? And then what plus what is a negative 9? Let's think, trial and error. You're going to make mistakes. So give me two numbers that we can multiply to get 20. I wouldn't even worry about the adding to negative 9 yet. So let's think, what two numbers can I multiply to get 20? 10 and 2, let's try it out. Perfect, let's see. Okay, so here's a 10, here's a 2. 10 times 2 is 20. If we add them together, 10 plus 2, we get 12. So that doesn't work. So here's my 10 and 2, okay? So with this, if you have, if this one is positive and this one is negative, that means when you multiply negative times a negative is positive. But when you add those two numbers together, negative 10 plus negative 2, you would get a negative 12. Okay, so that's actually a little bit closer to our answer there. So that's a little hint that the two numbers that we're multiplying and we're adding together, they need to be negative. So I wrote down here negative 10, negative 2. It wasn't that. So let's think of two other numbers. They're going to be both negative. What other two numbers can we multiply to get a positive 20? Negative what times negative what? And you are going to make mistakes. What else could we multiply to get 20? It's going to be full of trial and error here. We can always do 1. Let's do 1 times 20. Negative 1 times negative 20 is positive 20, yes. But negative 1 plus negative 20, that would be a negative 21. So that doesn't work either. So I tried the negative 1 times negative 20. Okay, so we can't use 10 and 2, and we can't use the 1 and 20. Is there anything else that we could multiply to get 20 and then add to negative 9? And if you flip your numbers around 2, 10, 20, and 1, it's the same thing. So let's not do that. You're going to get a whole different set of numbers. Let's see the 4 and the 5. So let's see negative 4 times a negative 5, or you can even rearrange it. Like I said, it doesn't matter. Negative 5 times negative 4. It doesn't matter the order that you write it. Let's see, negative 5 times negative 4 is positive 20. And then negative 5 plus negative 4 is negative 9. So yep, that's our winner, the negative 5 and the negative 4. Okay, so you're going to make lots of mistakes. What I would do when you're doing it is write down all of the numbers that you know it is not the correct answer, like I was doing here. I know these ones were wrong, so I was writing those down to keep track of it. Okay, let's keep on going one step further. We're going to split up that middle term. I'm going to use a bracket since we factored out the 3. The first term, 10x squared, stays the same, and the last term, plus 2, stays the same. This term in the middle is the one that's going to get split up with the negative 5 and the negative 4 with the x touching it as well. So here's my minus 5x and the minus 4x, because negative 5x minus 4x, if we were to combine these, if we were going up, you would get a negative 9x. We just kind of split it up there. Now, let's do our factor by grouping, which was the example a little to the right. So we've got our two sets of parentheses. And we're going to factor something out of here. 10 divided by what and 5 divided by what? The biggest number is 5. So let's do our division. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Negative 5 divided by 5 is negative 1. Now let's see if we can take out an x. Yes, we can. You're going to take out the smallest exponent of 1. divide x to the power of 2 divided by x to the power of 1, subtract 2 minus 1 is 1. And then your other one, x to the power of 1 divided by x to the power of 1, 1 minus 1 is 0. And then clean it up if you can. This first term, I can erase the exponent of 1 because it's invisible. This one here, I can also erase the exponent of 1 because it's invisible. And then our last one, first do the x to the power of 0. Anything to the power of 0 is really equal to 1. So here's my times 1. And then anything times 1 is just that anything. -1 times 1 is -1. So it's gone. Okay, I'm going to scoot this over a little bit. -1. Okay, let's do our last term here, factoring out here. We're doing the factor by grouping. So if this is 2x minus 1, this one is also 2x minus 1. Okay, so let's think here. You can look at your ones with no variables. Let's think 2 divided by what would be a -1? 2 divided by what would be a -1? What would I factor out here? 2 divided by what is -1? -2. Let's check and see. I'm going to put in a -2. So let's double check. 2 divided by -2 is -1. Perfect. Let's just check our other coefficient. -4 divided by -2 is +2. Perfect. So we did it correct. Okay. So now let's do our very last step. Pretty much just like writing out our answer here. Okay, here's my 3, my brackets, first set of parentheses, second set of parentheses, and the brackets. So this one here, we have no, all the exponents are the same. So you can put them in any order. So you can take the 2x minus 1, you can put it first, or you can put it last, it doesn't matter. And then the 5x minus 2, we'll put it in the last group. That would be your final answer there for the trinomials when you have to do the X puzzle there. That would be your final answer. You could FOIL it, check your work, and see how you did there. Okay, so there is our whole visual on the graphic organizer. Be careful with this section here because we totally changed it from the notes that are attached on Schoology. Make sure you have that there. You're going to be doing all of the questions on the assignment, numbers 1 through 14. This assignment, this is what you're submitting a picture of. Whoops. You're submitting a picture of this here. This is what you're taking a picture of. Okay. Make sure you show all of your work, show all of your steps for all of those there, numbers 1 through 14. If you're not sure what to submit a picture of, just submit a picture of everything. And then you'll have a picture of this there to get your credit. But that's pretty much it. That's your assignment for today. I'm going to finish up setting up the quiz for tomorrow. There's no meeting tomorrow. It's just the quiz tomorrow. And then once it's open, I'll post a little message to let you guys know the quiz is open. And then you can take it today or tomorrow. But that's a quiz tomorrow. And then we'll meet again on Wednesday at 9 a.m. So if you have no questions for me, that's it for today. Work on this assignment, submit that picture, and you can log off. But if you do have questions, I'm still here. You can type in the chat or you can send me a message. But that is it for today. Just make sure you say something in the chat before you go. All right, bye guys if you're leaving. Bye guys, have a good day. And I'm still here if you have questions or send me a message. We've got a few more people in here. If you guys have a question, just send me a message, but I'm going to go ahead and end this meeting. Just send me a message if you get stuck or have a question.